Good day. I'm Daniela Ellerbeck, an attorney and the Constitutional Rights Program Manager at the F.W. de Klerk Foundation. Tonight, we had the privilege of listening to Jonathan Granoff talk about nuclear weapons and former President de Klerk's role in dismantling South Africa's nuclear arsenal. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, Daniela.
Jonathan, you had the opportunity to engage with former President de Klerk in various forums and talk about peace and nuclear weapons, disarming nuclear weapons, and so forth. What were your impressions of him as a man?
He had a rare combination of understanding the convergence of what's morally imperative and what's practically possible. When you have a policy that's morally incoherent, but apparently practical, you end up with improved means to unimproved ends. That would be nuclear weapons. The more you perfect the weapons, the less security you get. Your ends are wrong. But when you have a convergence of what is morally good and practical, you have something that's compelling. So that's what he saw in the possibility of a constitutional democracy as a road to overcome the toxicity and immorality of apartheid and racial injustice. Similarly, he saw the opportunity to get rid of a nuclear arsenal that South Africa had built when the Cold War ended and the Berlin Wall came down, and there was no reason for South Africa to have these weapons. So he took the step of ensuring their removal.
And how do you view that step that he took, not just in terms of what it meant for South Africa, but as a global president?
It set in motion the capacity of South Africa to be a global leader in the movement to stop the proliferation of these weapons of horrific destruction, and the movement for their universal elimination, which is legally required by the unanimous ruling of the International Court of Justice and embodied in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. So what he was propounding and demonstrated in practice was both morally correct, legally correct, and in terms of security, practical. So the only thing that wouldn't support it is the belief that we can rely on threatening global annihilation as a methodology of pursuing national security. I don't think that's very realistic. By accident, design, or madness, the weapons will be used. If some countries have them, others will want them, and they will get them. As long as they exist, the possibility is very real that they'll be used. If they're used, humanity ends. There's nothing that could justify that. So if there was a full exchange, for example, between India and Pakistan, that would affect everybody in South Africa as well as New York City. And if you had a full-scale nuclear exchange between Russia and the United States, which collectively have over 95% of the world's nuclear weapons, not only would humanity be destroyed, but almost every other life form would be destroyed. The destructive capacity of these weapons is simply beyond imagination. Not only would we destroy humans, we would destroy other lives.
Yeah.
You know, the web of life. The arrogance of this and the belief that we're not able to sit down at the table and work out our differences, I think is not realistic. Not long ago, there were over 70,000 nuclear weapons in the world. Today, there's less than 14,000. That's an 80% reduction. That was put in motion because of Mikhail Gorbachev and Ronald Reagan, a Republican president. And the destruction of these massive amounts of the arsenal is not an insignificant achievement. So we know how to do disarmament. We know how to take the fuel, take it out of the missiles, and use it for energy. So we know how to do that, and it's been done. So the world needs to understand that we have substantially engaged in disarmament activities. And that achievement is worth applauding. Where we are today, more dangerous than simply having the weapons, is there's been a breakdown of trust. There's been a breakdown of trust because of the invasion of Iraq, in which it was all based on alleged weapons of mass destruction that were not there, because of the invasion of Ukraine, and the threat to use these weapons as a exercise of the extension of power. These things are very dangerous, but in terms of disarmament, reducing the arsenals by 80% or more, that's not insignificant. So we need to, tip our hats for what's good and raise our voices to stop the ongoing madness.
And in your view, what is stopping the dismantling of the remaining 20%?
Fear. The belief that pursuing human security as a primary task of the state diminishes the sovereignty and security of particular states. My belief is that working together to protect the oceans, the climate, the rainforests, address pandemics, actually doesn't diminish security. It actually strengthens security. The first duty of the state is to provide security for its people.
Protect its people.
You can't do that as a state alone to protect the breathing. 60% of our oxygen comes from phytoplankton, which depends on the health of the oceans. The oceans can't be protected at a national level.
Yeah.
We have to cooperate to do that. That's not a geostrategic issue. That's a hard science issue. That's a realism issue. It's not realistic to think that we can institutionalize such horrific adversity on Monday and then cooperate on Tuesday to protect this common resource. The human beings who are supposed to do this, diplomats, are placed in an irreconcilable cognitive conflict of saying we have to protect the climate and the oceans together, but we're going to enhance our national security with these weapons of mass destruction. This incoherence has to stop, and in the way that slavery at one time was considered normal, threatening the future of humanity one day will not be considered normal. It's certainly not realistic today, but it is normal. So we have to bring the normal into the realistic.
Do you think that President De Klerk's way of thinking about nuclear weapons being both immoral and impractical, that led to his decision to disarm South Africa's nuclear arsenal, do you think that's replicable elsewhere? Do you think other leaders will buy into that? I mean, we've already discussed that 70% or 80% of the nuclear weapons have been dismantled, and that the remaining 20 are there because 20% are there because of fear.
Yeah, I think if the people of the world knew the reality of nuclear weapons and knew what was being done in their name, they would say, we don't want this done in our name. They don't know. The public doesn't know very much about it. They don't know the consequences. They don't know the cost, the trillions of dollars that are expended to create these arsenals. They don't know the cost of what the use would be. They don't know. So I think if the people of the world were to know this, then they would see that this is it's not a reasonable thing to do. On the other hand, the geopolitical discourse presently, because of the war that's going on in Ukraine, places the hope at jeopardy. So we're in a precarious situation. And that's why it's so important to speak truth to power and say, we can do better. We have to do better. How do we do better? We have to build bridges. We have to continue to say, enough is enough. We need to sit down and talk. And so one of the things that has to happen is the United States and Russia and China and France, the United Kingdom, have to sit down and come up with a plan to make the world safer and get rid of the weapons. It's their legal obligation. It's a practical necessity. And we have to just keep demanding it till it's done.
Jonathan Granoff, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.